in a viable way. So it's everybody's impacted, not just the teachers.
Rosemary, a comment before we talk to Linda Stewart?
Oh, it's so complex.
It is complex.
One thing is, I mean, I realise that, I grew up in a different era, but the loss of prestige of teachers, the idea that you can behave in classrooms now, as some kids do, would have been utterly unimaginable in my time, and I was considered naughty.
Yeah. No, take your point. All right. President of the New Zealand Educational Institute, Linda Stewart, joining us on the panel. Hello, Linda.
Hi there, Jim. Lovely to talk to you.
You too. Teachers have been complaining for eons about paperwork. Why has it taken until now?
Well, you're quite right, and I think the issues that are facing our teachers have been well and truly canvassed by your little team there just now. It has got to a stage now where it is totally unsustainable, and so yes, it is time for it all to be addressed, and that's something that we've been talking about for some considerable time, but now I think we've got a government that are prepared to really look at this and take it seriously. And you're absolutely right, there's a lack of resources around learning support, those challenging behaviours, and that's really impacting on our teachers. The workload, the compliance issues, it's really impacting on our teachers. And what we need to be able to do in this country is to attract people into teaching, and then when we do attract them into teaching, keep them in the job.
Which is the prestige that was mentioned just before you came on. And we are forever hearing, aren't we, about places like Finland and Japan where teachers are respected and even revered, and teacher morale soars accordingly and so on.
And that is going to take all of us together to actually really raise the status of the profession. I think I've just come back from a school leadership conference in Johannesburg, and one of the things that I'm really mindful of is the fact that New Zealand is being looked at as a little bit of a beacon of hope at the moment, and I'm hoping that with moving things forward in the way that we're talking about right now, that we can actually deliver on those things that are necessary for our teachers and our leaders to have happening in our schools. And I have to also include our early childhood teachers in this too, because the sorts of pressures that we're talking about in our schools are absolutely mirrored in our early childhood centres.
Yes, and we talked about them the other day. Sorry we're a bit caught for time today, Linda, but thank you for coming on. That's Linda Stewart from the NZEI.
You're welcome.
And we'll see how that goes with the government. Just before we go, the Chinese Civil Aviation Administration has sent a letter to 36 foreign airlines, including Qantas, demanding they remove references on their websites or in other material that suggests that Taiwan, Hong Kong and Macau are part of countries independent from China. Qantas refers to the Republic of China, Taiwan. Man. It's not just airlines. Sites that recognise Taiwan, like the Marriott Hotels chain, are being blocked in China. Marriott referred to Taiwan and Tibet as separate countries. Air New Zealand says it hasn't received a Chinese letter. What should the airlines do?
Oh, God.
Should they take a notice of a letter like that or just say, no?
Well, they're going to pay a price if they don't, aren't they? Because if China, penalises them, we'll know all about it.
Yes, I guess we'll know all about it.
They'll soon get a letter, because Air New Zealand will soon get a letter because you've mentioned this now.
We might get a letter. Peter Whawhia, thank you very much. Whawhatai.
Whawhatai, love it.
Rosemary McLeod, thank you, Rosemary. Nice to have you back.
Thank you.
We're back tomorrow. Thanks, everyone. Checkpoint now.
Tō te marae hoa mai he kōrero, kei te haere he kaupapa, kei te karawhio. Tonight, when is an item of clothing made in New Zealand? World designer Dame Denise Lestrange-Courbet comes under fire for putting made in New Zealand swing tags on items of clothing in her store when some were actually made in Bangladesh. The Kilauea volcano claims 26 homes. We speak to evacuees who describe being pelted by molten rock. Also tonight, Countdown counts down to banning plastic bags. Craggy Range backtracks on a promise to remove that controversial track up to Mata Peak. Netball New Zealand announces who will review the Silver Ferns' poor performance at the Commonwealth Games. And Haas residents take calls on their cell phones in Haas for the first time, but not everyone's that excited.
RNZ News at 5 o'clock. Good afternoon, I'm Anna Thomas. The number of police pursuits has increased by just over 400 in a year, while deaths from those crashes have more than doubled. A driver crashed and died in New Plymouth early this morning, just minutes after the police say they called off a chase. The police say there have been just over 4,100 pursuits between March 2017 and 2018, about 750 more than the previous year. The number of deaths has also increased, with 12 between March 2016 and 2017 and 27 the following year. In this morning's incident, the police say a driver who was speeding and who failed to stop was chased by an officer. They say the pursuit stopped after the fleeing driver reversed into the officer's vehicle. A short time later, the driver's crashed vehicle was found in a nearby street and he died at the scene. Up to 26 homes have now been destroyed as the eruption of Hawaii's Kilauea volcano shows no sign of letting up. 2 new glowing fissures have opened up in the Lelani Estates area, where lava has burst through the ground and has spewed up to 70 metres in the air. More than 1,700 people have now been evacuated. Local resident Jeff Delaware says one of the new fissures opened up close to his property.
It's like a Goliath, or like a roaring jet engine when a jet engine is taking off or landing. That's what it sounds like. And this morning, that's what I woke up to, and it was geysering into the sky, probably 100 feet.
Hawaii's resident Jeff Delaware. There have been no fatalities or injuries associated with the eruption, which is on the other side of the island's resort area. Kaikoura's ratepayers could be hit with a 17% rates increase over the next 2 years to help fund the earthquake recovery. The Kaikoura District Council's draft 3-year plan proposes multi-million-dollar investments in infrastructure and the earthquake rebuild. The area was devastated by a 7.8 magnitude earthquake in November 2016. Mayor Winston Gray says a 17% rates increase over 2 years would fund much needed infrastructure projects.
We've got our main sewer line badly damaged. We've got obviously quite a lot of work to do with the water, plus some of the increased works that will be required for water across the nation. We'll have those costs most likely, and our roading, mainly bridges. So we've got 5 bridges to be replaced, is to get that work done and out of the way.
Kaikoura's Mayor Winston Gray. A suicide support organisation says it takes courage to talk openly about suicide, but it's vitally important. 60% of 10 to 14-year-olds who took their own lives in a 4-year period were Māori. Figures from the Child Youth Mortality Review Committee show that between 2012 and 2016, 20 children who committed suicide in that age bracket were Māori. Tuta Ngarimu, a manager for Gisborne's suicide support organisation Ngāti for Life, says the suicide rate in the community is at an unprecedented rate.
We need to put this kōrero out there in the open and drag it from out of the dark room out into the public arena so we can all look at it and acknowledge it, that it's happening to ourselves, and let's do something about it.
Tuta Ngarimu from Gisborne's suicide support organisation Ngāti for Life. The head of Australia's Border Protection Agency says the whole Indo-Pacific region must take responsibility for preventing people smuggling. A tanker carrying about 130 Sri Lankans was intercepted at the weekend by Malaysian authorities. They said they were trying to get to Australia or New Zealand. Air Vice Marshal Stephen Osborne has praised his Malaysian counterparts for stopping the boat before it arrived in Australian waters.
This was a much larger vessel than we've seen for some time. It certainly was a larger number of people involved. It certainly seems to also have been far more complex and sophisticated.
Stephen Osborne. Australia's Home Affairs Minister Peter Dutton also says it's one of the largest people smuggling ventures officials have seen for some time. Countdown says banning plastic bags is just the first step of a wider initiative to reduce plastic in its supermarkets. 10 Countdown supermarkets will stop providing plastic bags this month, with all of its supermarkets following suit by the end of the year. Countdown spokesperson Kitty Hannafin says customers have already reduced their use of plastic bags by 16% since it announced the move last year. Ms Hannafin says public habits can be changed through corporations taking more responsibility.
Most recently, we've removed plastic packaging from bananas, and that is taking 158 tonnes of plastic out of New Zealand waste stream every year. So we're just going to systematically go through our business and look at plastic and see where we can reduce.
Ms Hannafin says the chain is looking for its customers to bring their own reusable bags for staff to pack. However, options will be available for those who come without. It's 5:05. The panel to carry out a wholesale review of the Silver Ferns' failed Commonwealth Games campaign will leave no stone unturned as it tries to discover what went wrong, says review's leader Don McKinnon. Mr McKinnon, an Auckland lawyer and former Netball New Zealand chair, will be joined by Team New Zealand's America's Cup Chief Operating Officer Kevin Shoebridge and former Silver Fern and businesswoman Linda Vagana on the review panel.
You're looking at performance, you're looking at everything around the build-up, were there enough games, enough camps, how strong was the strength and conditioning, how strong was mental skills, nutrition, all of those aspects of preparation, on-court tactics, buy-in of the players. It needs to be fairly broad. Don
McKinnon. Celebrations have been low-key for New Zealand equestrian John Price in the wake of her victory in the prestigious badminton horse trial in England. Price, on her Mount Classic Moe, became the first woman to win the event in 11 years. Price says after an exhausting 5 days of competition, she simply enjoyed a couple of glasses of champagne at home with close family, but we'll make up for that later.
We actually live only an hour away from badminton, so tonight we've just come home. I had a little boy just last year, he's only 8 months old, so sort of had to get home and put him to bed. But I think tomorrow will probably be the day we might wake up and probably will have sunk in, and then we'll enjoy it with a wider fraternity and people that have helped or make it possible.
John Price. And a world team, including New Zealand's Paige Harrop, featuring the world's top surfers, has won the World Surf League's inaugural Founders Cup competition at a wave pool in California. And that's the news.
Janelle Price, the first New Zealand woman to win badminton.
She rode her luck a little bit. One or two fences were rattled on their way round, but she thoroughly deserved her victory.
An assault on the regions.
There seems to be a lack of any kind of comprehension that when the farmers sneeze, we all catch a cold.
Dentists despairing over children with rotting teeth.
As young as 18 months, tooth decay is a socio-economic disease.
Drilling down. Morning Report with Susie Ferguson and Guy Espin are weekdays from 6.
Then on 9 to noon, are growing numbers of EV owners getting adequate after-sales support? And after 10, Charlie Patterson, who lived for 7 years in remote Fiordland National Park, chasing a dream that almost destroyed him. Join me, Catherine Ryan, on 9 to noon after Morning Report on RNZ National.
And now the short forecast from Met Service to midnight tomorrow. All of the North Island, cloud developing this evening from Taranaki to Manawatu, and there could be the odd shower around Taihape. For Nelson, mainly fine, but a few showers about tomorrow. For Bulla, a few showers, more frequent tomorrow morning and turning to rain in the evening. Marlborough and Canterbury, northwesterlies becoming strong tomorrow and severe gales in exposed places of South Canterbury. Westland and Fiordland, periods of rain, briefly heavy tomorrow afternoon or evening with possible thunderstorms. Otago and Southland fine with showers about Stewart Island. A period of rain for you too tomorrow afternoon or tomorrow evening. And west to northwest gales tomorrow severe at times. And for the Chatham Islands mainly fine, but a few showers in the morning. RNZ National. It's 5:08 and you're listening to Checkpoint with John Campbell.
And Anna Thomas, thank you very much indeed, Anna, and thank you everyone for being with us. Coming up on the programme tonight, World and the phrase Fabrique en Nouvelle-Zélande. Is it all? Also tonight, are we seeing the beginning of the long farewell to plastic bags, and a stunning, sobering report on the very high suicide rate among young Māori. All of that and more coming up in the next hour and a half. But we're going to begin on the Kilauea volcano on Hawaii's Big Island. 2 new glowing fissures have opened up in the Leilani Estates area where lava has burst through the ground and has spewed up to 100 metres in the air. More than 1,700 people have now been evacuated. Some will never return and have been told to prepare for the possibility that they may not even be able to get things out of their homes in some cases. Elizabeth Brown reports.
Eruption is happening in Leilani. We get some lava coming out right now. Look at the smoke.
The photos are dramatic, glowing ribbons snaking through the bush for miles, lava spewing out of roads and burning molten rock creeping towards properties. The number of homes destroyed has climbed to 26, with a total of 10 lava fissures cracking the earth in Leilani Estates and nearby Lanipuna Gardens in the mostly rural district of Puna. One of them is close to Jeff Delaware's home.
It's like a roaring, it's like a Goliath, or like a roaring jet engine when a jet engine is taking off or landing. That's what it sounds like. And this morning, that's what I woke up to, and it was glaciering into the sky, probably 100 feet.
Some of the evacuated residents were given a 10-hour window to return to their homes and grab what they could.
It was kind of all surreal, but we knew it was coming, and yeah, even now it's kind of like it's really surreal at this point.
Others are reluctant to leave.
Living here, that's the gamble that you take, is to have all this beauty. And you got to just know that you live on an active volcano.
A mandatory evacuation order is in place for much of the affected area, and the National Guard has been called in to help. Some neighbourhoods which aren't yet affected by molten or spewing lava are off limits due to dangerous volcanic gases. The acting mayor of Hilo, Will Okabe, says evacuation centres have been set up.
There is lava coming out from a road. Civil Defence is active in a 24-hour watch, and all of the police officers and all the agencies from Public Works to Parks are there to ensure that the public is safe. So we have provided some shelters, 3 shelters in this Puna area for the people to come, but many of them are staying in their cars because they have a lot of property.
Scientists monitoring the volcano say the eruption is unpredictable. The molten lava normally runs in channels to the sea, but it started to flow in different directions. Geophysicist Mike Poland from the US Geological Survey says Kilauea is likely to release more lava through additional vents, but it's hard to say exactly where.
The worst case scenario would be that this eruption intensifies over time and turns into a long-lived vent that might last days, weeks, or even longer. And that would certainly impact an area that a lot of people call home.
This latest activity on Kilauea is part of what has been a constant state of eruption since 1983. Mike Poland says it's also not the first time a burst of activity has destroyed homes and displaced communities.
There have been other times when magma has intruded beneath populated areas and erupted. In fact, in 1960, not far from this area, an eruption effectively destroyed the village of Kapoho. So there's a history of this kind of thing happening in Hawaii.
So far, no fatalities or major injuries have been reported from the eruption or the swarm of strong earthquakes associated with it. And in a state which sells itself as a slice of paradise, officials have been quick to say the volcano is far from the island's iconic resort areas and it's business as usual. For Checkpoint, Ko Elizabeth Brown, tēnei.
Trevor Hughes is covering the eruption for USA Today. I asked him a short time ago where he was and what he could see.
I'm in a town called Pahoa, which is it is the town where the lava flow is. It's about where I'm parked right now is about 5 or 6 miles away from the flow itself, and you can still see the cloud billowing into the air. It's actually only about 5:30 in the afternoon right now. It's quite a lovely day, actually, but there are people staged up here at the evacuation information center. I mean, you got pickup trucks full of camping equipment and kitchen goods. You've got people driving around with mattresses on their roofs, trying to figure out where they're going to sleep. Because a lot of folks, this is their 4th night that they've been out of their homes.
And of course, they're not insured against this, are they?
Well, that is the tricky thing about this, is that in many cases you can't get insurance to cover the lava damage to your house. So if your house burns down because someone throws a cigarette out the window and starts a wildfire, you might be covered. But if the lava starts that fire, then you might not be covered. And that is a real challenge for many folks.
Yeah, terrifying. So they run the risk of losing everything. How many people have been evacuated now, Trevor? How many homes?
So it's about 1,700 people. It's a little hard to tell how many homes there are. It's quite actually a rural area, and the homes are on about an acre plot apiece, and they're sometimes set back from the road. So it's a little hard to tell exactly how many houses are actually in the affected area. But it's about 1,700 people, and frankly, dozens and dozens of dogs and cats.
Yeah, I bet. So the lava's still coming out. It's not showing any sign of drying up, for want of a more scientific term.
Well, yes, that is sort of generally what's happened. So yesterday the lava quieted down a little bit, and then first thing this morning it really took off, and I was standing near, and you would have thought you were standing by the ocean with the waves crashing on the beach, just this pulsing jet-like sound of this lava. It's just a very eerie sound to see, and it lighting up the sky of just bright orange.
And can you feel the heat?
Oh, goodness, yes. This is the lava as it's flowing across people's yards or across the road. You can walk right up to it because it's moving quite slowly. It's not flowing like a flood. It's sort of molasses-like. But it is boiling hot. Boy, you can't stand there for more than a few seconds before it's just too hot. And if you're taking photos with your phone, for instance, your phone might overheat very easily because it's so darn hot.
Trevor, what's going to happen to this community? Is this sustainable? Will people be able to return in a long-term sense if this is going to keep happening?
Well, that is a question that I probably can't answer for you. I will tell you, though, that there are plenty of neighborhoods on this island where this has happened before, and people have moved back to them. In some cases, literally hacking out the lava rock down to a level where they can get back to their own space. But there are many neighborhoods that have had this flow come through, and sometimes those building plots are abandoned, and sometimes folks choose to rebuild.
It's Trevor Hughes from USA Today. It's 60 minutes past 5. You're with Checkpoint on RNZ. We turn now to the clothing label world, a celebrated survivor of the birth of the modern New Zealand fashion movement dating back to 1989. Part of what World sells is, well, designs that are singularly exuberant and particular. And part of what World sells is its New Zealandness, New Zealand owned, New Zealand designed, New Zealand made, except it appears for some t-shirts, sweatpants and sweatshirts that were made in Bangladesh. Now, World still manufactures most of its clothing and all its top-end fashion in New Zealand, but the labels on everything say Fabrique en Nouvelle-Zélande, even when that's not true. This was revealed by the website Spin-Off this morning, and since Spin-Off's story, it's been picked up by everyone, including, as you can hear, us. Maida Dame for services to fashion in the community, Denise Lestrange-Courbet, has talked a great deal about the choice to be a New Zealand-made fashion label, even criticising major international clothing labels for sourcing garments from factories in Asia. Now, World sources through AS Colour, and they do not use child labour. Indeed, they say they only work with factories that can assure auditable standards of safe, fair, legal and humane working conditions. But they're not New Zealand factories. So I asked Dame Denise, do they get some garments from Bangladesh?
Yes, we do.
Right, and does it say on the tags they're made in New Zealand?
Yes, it does. On the sew-in label. And this is the problem, because I was approached by the Spin-Off on Friday and asked to answer these questions. And they asked if we cut out our labels and put in labels saying they were made in New Zealand. And I said, we absolutely do not do that.
Okay, but what I want some clarity around is that it does say made in New Zealand on the tags, doesn't it?
The tags are a swing tag that just have the barcode and the price.
And but it says now, Fabrique en Nouvelle-Zélande, right?
Yes, it does. But look, I have to point out.
But the fabric's not en Nouvelle-Zélande, is it?
No, but we've just got 10 T-shirts in the stores. We have to make 5,000 tags at a time. And in the 7 years we've been doing this overseas, I've never had a customer complain because everybody looks at the label that is sewn in to the garment, because the tag is just taken off and thrown away. There has never been any confusion. We have never taken something out and sewn something else in. But they have still gone ahead and printed
I guess the confusion, it seems to me to surround the fact that you have, and Spin-Off quotes from that article you wrote for Apparel, and I've just read it at high speed. and you say, I mean, you really have a go at H&M and Zara. You talk about them using manufacturing bases in Sri Lanka, India, Bangladesh, Ethiopia, Cambodia. You talk about the fact that in order to source garments cheaply, there is only one possible explanation for that, and that is that the labour's cheap. Well, on the AC Colour website, you can buy these T-shirts for $13 each. Now, if they're able to wholesale T-shirts for $13 each, including just they're paying bugger all for them, which means that someone somewhere isn't being paid very much, Denise, and I thought that's what you stood against.
No, I do stand against that. The factories that make our garments are all credited. They do not use slave labour. The people work 40 hours a week and they have holidays and they have all the same things as our production does in New Zealand. All our design collection is made in New Zealand. We do a few T-shirts each season for, well, it's like the lesser brand, but we don't sell them as is. We always embellish them. And so we have never said that our T-shirts are not made fair, but we have been very strict with AS Colour before we went into production with them as to the conditions the workers have. And the factory that we use, AS Colour is a New Zealand-based company, and every 3 months they send up a representative to ensure that the guidelines for production are adhered to, and this goes also for the conditions the workers have to work in.
Yes, which is what's confusing, I guess, because you have the factory there in Bangladesh, and if we go inside the garment, on the washing instruction tag, it does indeed say exactly that. But the swing tag attached to the outside of the garment, hanging there on the rack, that says Fabrique en Nouvelle-Zélande, doesn't it?
Yes, and that wasn't done to mislead anyone.
It doesn't matter, though. It is misleading, isn't it, Denise?
Well, no, I don't think it is, because the customer just takes that off and throws it away. The garment has the label with the country of origin in it. Now, if the customer thinks that's misleading, we can just cut that off the bottom. But the tag in the garment states quite clearly where it is made. There is nothing being cut out of any garment.
No, absolutely. But what if you were going through the shelves at World, going through the racks at World? What are you most likely to see? Are you likely to see the little thing inside the T-shirt, or are you likely to see the big piece of card attached to the T-shirt saying Fabrique en Nouvelle-Zélande?
To be honest, most customers are asked that the tag be taken off at point of sale, so it's thrown away anyway.
But Denise, isn't this part of your brand? I mean, isn't this? Don't you sell?
It absolutely is part of my brand. But I wouldn't have thought that someone would have mistaken that as it's a tag. It's not the garment label. It's not what's in the garment. What stays in the garment. It comes off immediately after purchase.
But it's the thing you see, isn't it? It's the thing you see in the shop, isn't it?
Oh, yeah, it is the thing you see, but most people look at the garment label inside the garment to see where it's made, what it's made of, what the instructions are. So, like I said, I've never had anyone query this before. But, you know, if New Zealanders think we should take the tags off, then, you know, that's easy to do. It's just put on with a safety pin.
Can we just go through the garments? So T-shirts are sourced through AC Colour, which were made in Bangladesh. Sweatshirts?
Sometimes we do sweatshirts, but again, you need specialist machinery for binding and things that we can't access in New Zealand any longer. So some
sweatshirts, through AS Colour. Some sweatshirts?
Yes.
Some sweatpants?
Yes.
So T-shirts, sweatshirts and sweatpants sourced through AS Colour are made in Bangladesh?
Well, they could be made in Bangladesh. AS Colour uses a variety of factories. So they oversee all of them. They all have child-free labour, and so they're not your sweatshops. There is a big difference between a T-shirt retailing for $5. That is a sweatshop, because when you trace it back, you know that someone's not getting paid. But ours are not that.
So how much are the people in the AS Colour factories who make the T-shirts that AS Colour are able to wholesale for $13 each, and that you add things to and sell for somewhere in the region of $100? How much are those workers being paid per hour?
I don't know, because you would have to speak to AS Colour about that.
It's just, this isn't a very rigorous occupation of the moral high ground here, Denise. I mean, you don't know what these people are getting paid. You have a card attached by safety pin to the document, which is the thing people are most, to the garment, which is the thing people are most likely to see when they shop, saying fabric en Nouvelle-Zélande. It's not, you can see why people actually might think, what the hell is going on here?
It's just a tag that goes on with the price and the barcode.
But it's not. But it's not true, Denise. It's not true.
Led by this, I would have taken it off.
What if you'd known that people were going to believe what you were telling them? If you knew what people.
I've never had anyone come back and say that they were misled by this in the 7 years we've been doing it, because I would have thought the New Zealand public was a bit smarter than that and could actually see the tag sewn into the garment, which is quite plainly states where it's made.
Denise Lestrange-Courbet from World. The Commerce Commission says it's received 2 complaints about World today. That's complaints from members of the public, we presume. AS Colour has not returned Checkpoint's calls for comments. We'd love to know what the workers are being paid in those factories, auditable factories. Apologies for my French pronunciation. A few people have pointed out I was abysmal. And you're right. It's 26 minutes past 5. 350 million single-use plastic bags. That's how many bags are used every year at Countdown checkouts across the country. 350 million. But from the 21st of May, 10 Countdown supermarkets across the country will no longer supply the bags. You'll have to bring your own instead. Our reporter Sarah Murphy has a look at this.
Aucklanders outside Countdown Supermarket on Greylands Richmond Road, for the most part, have already embraced reusable bags.
I always carry bags. I'm a little bit of a crusader, so I always have bags in my handbag. So if I forget them, I don't take plastic bags anywhere.
I've got reusable bags, but like today, if I don't have them, then I'll recycle them.
I think it's a great idea, but it's going to be difficult if you forget to take your bags, and then you have to buy a whole lot more of these sort of bags. So it'd be good if they had the non-plastic alternatives at the counter that you can buy for 10 cents. I think some companies produce those.
Countdown spokesperson Kiri Hannafin says the company is aware that this won't be a smooth transition for everyone, but habits are meant to be broken.
Some of the main concerns tend to be about what people will do with their bin liners and how people will pick up their dog mess. Are the 2 major concerns, I guess, that people are expressing to us. But also, generally, I think people getting their groceries packed with single-use bags has become quite a habit, and it's just a matter of changing habits, remembering to bring your own bag.
Ms Hannafin says banning single-use plastic bags is only the beginning of what will be a wider company initiative to reduce plastic.
Most recently, we've removed plastic packaging from bananas, and that is taking 158 tonnes of plastic out of New Zealand waste stream every year. So we're just going to systematically go through our business and look at plastic and see where we can reduce.
The bags will be banned at 10 Countdown supermarkets from Dargaville to Christchurch by the end of the month, but will be phased out across all Countdown supermarkets by the end of the year. New World has also committed to becoming plastic-free by the end of the year, but is staggering its approach through 10-cent voluntary donations for plastic bags or a 5-cent discount for customers who bring their own. Pack and Save charges for plastic bags and offers cardboard boxes as an alternative. The chairperson of Zero Waste Network, Māori Hoffert, praises the supermarkets for removing bags from checkouts, but says the move doesn't go far enough.
Should have done this 15 years ago. And still, good on the supermarkets for doing this, but my question is, what about everybody else? And I still think the government has to put pressure on getting all the retailers to stop dishing out plastic bags, because we use 1.6 billion of them a year.
Associate Environment Minister Eugenie Sage says we all need to be doing more to reduce our use of single-use plastic bags.
The government needs to make it easier for people to do the right thing, but we all have responsibility when we buy things to look at, do we really need them? How are they designed? Can they be reused at the end of their life? Do we need that single-use plastic bag? Can we take our own bag, which is always the better option?
Despite critique, Ms Sage says the government is taking leadership, including seeking advice from officials on the best methods to phase out bags.
Overseas, there's been a levy used in areas like the UK and bans put in place in other jurisdictions. So we're looking at the best way of doing this.
Ms Sage says the government will receive advice on the best methods in the middle of this year. With most supermarkets planning to phase out plastic bags by the end of the year, it may pay to start packing a few extra reusable bags in the car or on the back of the bike, just in case. E tamaki makoro mo te hōtaka o te ahi, ko Sarah Murphy tēnei.
You are with Checkpoint on RNZ. Horror from the French community in New Zealand about my pronunciation. Anna Thomas has just been teasing me about it. I'd like to apologise to my French teacher at Wellington College, Jackie Romanovsky, if she's listening.
Gosh, you took lessons,
Well,
even.
My mind was elsewhere, Anna. Anyway, thank you for pointing that out. Coming up, New Zealand Equestrian Janelle Price wins the prestigious badminton. Shut up, Anna. Badminton horse trials just 8 months after having a baby. Netball New Zealand announces who will review the Silver Fence poor performance at the Commonwealth Games, and Haas residents take calls on their cell phones for the first time. The guy we called wasn't actually that excited. Oh yeah, John, whatever. Anyway, that's coming up. It's quite delightful radio. No French is murdered in the making of that interview either. We'd love your feedback. Do text us 2101 or email checkpoint@radionz.co.nz, and you can tweet us, of course, at checkpointRNZ. It's still 5:30, Anissa. Take it away.
Thanks, John. The number of police pursuits has risen by about 750 in the past year. A driver crashed and died in New Plymouth early this morning, just minutes after the police say they called off a chase. Police figures show there were just over 4,000 pursuits between March 2017 and 2018, 750 more than in the previous year. And the number of deaths has more than doubled in the same period. The eruption of Hawaii's Kilauea volcano shows no sign of letting up. 26 homes have now been destroyed and more than 1,700 people evacuated. One resident says the roar when one of the fissures opened near his home was like a jet engine taking off. Kaikoura ratepayers face a 17% rates rise in the next 2 years to help fund recovery from the 7.8 magnitude quake in November 2016. The Mayor says the increase would help fund much needed infrastructure projects. These include replacing 5 bridges and repairing a badly damaged sewer line. Countdown says customers have already reduced their use of plastic bags by 16% since it announced it would stop providing plastic bags. But spokesperson Kerry Hannafin says corporations can change customers' habits by taking more responsibility. She says they are going through their business to see where they can reduce plastic packaging, as they've done most recently with bananas. The Prime Minister says she and the former US Secretary of State Hillary Clinton talked about New Zealand domestic politics when they met this morning, but also what it's like being a mum in politics. The pair met for an hour this morning in Auckland, and Jacinda Ardern says they had a great discussion and exchanged gifts. Ms Clinton is speaking at Auckland Spark Arena tonight about the aftermath of the 2016 US election and her experience as a woman in politics. And that's the news.
Thank you very much indeed, Anna. Let's go to Wellington, where Emile Donovan is standing by to do business with us this week. I think, Emile, thank you for joining us. Westpac Bank has turned a corner. What kind of corner? Who's saying this?
So this is basically Westpac, really. John, they revealed their results today for the 6 months ended March, and they are in the black. In a pretty big way, actually. Cash profits for Westpac jumped up above $480 million. Largely because it managed to cut costs, and it also enjoyed an influx of cash from customer deposits. And the economy also has helped that bottom line. It drove up the interest rate margin. Now that's the difference between the rate at which a bank borrows money and the rate at which it lends it out. So that jumped up, and look, really all in all it's pretty good news for Westpac, and it also follows in the footsteps of the Bank of New Zealand, BNZ, which also declared a big net profit of $490 million last week.
Yeah, these are big, big numbers, aren't they, Emile? Although ANZ is still beating them all, by golly. What about Westpac and the issue with its parent over the Tasman? Any comment on what's happening in Australia and what we're learning through the Banking Royal Commission there?
There was, yeah, and it's really a familiar refrain if you've been following the story.
Yeah, I have. It's starting to sound a little bit rehearsed, although they could, of course, all be telling the same truth, Emile.
Indeed, that is a possibility. David McLean, he's the chief executive of New Zealand's Westpac. He says, look, there are big differences between the banking sectors in Australia and New Zealand. He says the Australian Royal Commission was kind of the culmination of years and years of whisperings and rumours, and the evidence was all there. It was almost sort of hidden in plain sight, and it just caught up to the bankers in the end. New Zealand, Mr McLean says, is very different. It's smaller. There's no suggestion beyond the company connection that the same stuff is going on, those extraordinary levels of duplicity that are going on across there. And as we say, it's really the singing from the same hymn sheet, punish not the son for the sins of the father.
Nice, Emile.
Yeah.
And they have to put their case to the FMA, and the FMA will look at the sins or otherwise of the son, so we will hear back. Exactly. Just before you go, very quickly, the Briscoe Group sales are up again, are they?
That's right, yeah. So Briscoe, the Briscoe Group owns Briscoe's, obviously, and Rebel Sport as well. It's pretty good news for them as well. Their sales rose by about $5 million, up to $146 million. That's 3.5% better than the same period last year. Excuse me. Interestingly, that's being driven mainly by Rebel Sport and their online sales. Their online sales had a double-digit percentage increase, and they account for about 8% of all of their sales now. So, look, the digital revolution continues to roll on.
What did the markets do before you go, Emile?
Well, the NZX 50 is up 38 points. That's 0.4%. It ended on 8587. And the dollar is steady. It's buying 70.2 US cents, 93.3 Australian, and 51.8 pence.
Emile Donovan, thank you very much indeed. Emile joining us live from the Wellington newsroom. Of course, let's go to Havelock North now, or just around the corner from it. Craggy Range's decision to backtrack on its promise to remove a controversial zigzag path that created up the eastern slope of Te Mata Peak. Someone pointing out it's not actually the famous side of Te Mata Peak, and that is the case. It's around the corner, but it's being described by local iwi and anti-track campaigners as disappointing. The winery pledged to restore the land back to its original state earlier this year, following an outcry from the public, including local iwi, of course, who were not consulted about the track. Craggy Range says restoring the land is now not as simple as previously thought, as it will cost millions and leave the landscape in a worse condition. Our Hawke's Bay reporter, Anusha Bradley, filed this report.
5 options to fix the track carved into Te Mata Peak and clearly visible from the Heratonga Plains below were presented in a report to affected parties early this morning. The report was commissioned by Craggy Range. Its chief executive, Michael Wilding, says completely removing the track as promised would cost millions, create legal issues and look even worse.
It's only going to leave the land potentially in a marginally better position. You're still going to see where the track was, but it's going to leave the community in a far worse position. So what the experts have actually said to us is the option that they've put forward around mitigation, doing the revegetation with the native flora, reintroducing the native birds through a native bird corridor through there, is actually going to leave the land in a far better position than before we actually started this project.
Representing local iwi, the chair of Te Tai Whenua o Heratonga, Mike Paku, says mana whenua still want to see the track completely removed.
It is somewhat disappointing from the point of view of mana whenua, but in saying that we do appreciate and understand that Craggy Range has wider issues to take into consideration. They have come under a huge amount of public response and pressure, and so they needed to take a wider view. The preferred option of mana whenua is the same as it has always been, and it hasn't changed. It is the restoration of the whenua. That has to be our starting point to any further conversation.
17,000 people signed a petition calling for the track to stay, and on weekends a constant stream of people can be seen scaling their way up and down the zigzagging path. But Anna Archibald, whose own petition calling for its removal attracted 4,000 signatures, says Craggy's plan to plant the eastern face of the slope with natives doesn't make sense.
Hugely disappointed. As a landscaper, you're actually drawing more attention to that area, that skinny little area that they bought. And if they're going to plant the whole thing, then you're really going to notice this very, very odd-shaped area of that iconic face of Te Mata Peak being planted, and your eye would be drawn to it even more, actually.
The chair of the Environmental Defence Society, Gary Taylor, agrees.
We're getting our landscape expert to review the material that they've produced. I have to say that there's a high level of spin and self-serving assumptions in that material.
Mr Taylor says the Society will also consider potential legal options after consulting with iwi and the Council. Te Mata Park and its famous peak are managed by the Te Mata Park Trust Board. RNZ understands the board's trustees are divided over whether to keep or remove the track. In a statement, its chair, Mike Devonshire, says it supports a solution that services the interests of the wider community. Hastings Mayor Sandra Hazelhurst declined to be interviewed, but says the District Council has asked for more information from Craggy Range about its proposal before deciding on an appropriate course of action. In Napier for Checkpoint, Anusha Bradley.
It's 20 minutes to 6 when Carmore High School student Mia Dunn took her own life at just 14 years old. Her family not only lost their loving daughter, she also became part of an alarming statistic. A recent report found 60% of people aged 10 to 14 who killed themselves between 2012 and 2016 were Māori. And the trend continues. Last year there was yet another spate of youth suicides in Whangarei, and a Gisborne-based community organisation says last year was their worst ever for Māori suicides there. Te Mana Korehi reported Te Aniwahuri Hanganui has more.
Mia Dunn from Whangarei took her own life in 2012, just 2 weeks after her boyfriend Colin had also committed suicide. They were both 14 years old. Her dad, Brendan Dunn, says Mia was a quiet girl, but grounded and strong. He says she was just an ordinary teenager.
She seemed to be a little bit wiser than her peers, I don't know, she just, maybe because she was just so quiet and didn't really talk as much as the others, and she was into sports, netball and all that, music, and she's one of those girls who loves doing her hair and straightening her hair, and she was just an all-round really nice girl, I don't ever remember hearing a swear word coming out of her mouth, to be honest.
Mr Dunn says he never suspected his daughter would take her own life. He says not enough young people know where or how to get help when they need it.
They isolate themselves in their own minds if they just don't know where to go, and if they do know where to go, I think they feel ashamed or embarrassed or undervalued. We need to educate the adults on how to approach children and approach teenagers with a bit more empathy maybe in their time and age. I think we need more understanding about what our teenagers are going through in this era.
A report by the Child and Youth Mortality Review Committee found 20 Māori youths aged between 10 and 14 took their own lives from 2012 to 2016. Ngāti for Life Trust Suicide Support Group in Gisborne deals with predominantly Māori whānau. Manager Tuta Ngarimu says Māori youth suicide in the community is at an unprecedented rate.
We had a bad year last year. One part there we were losing one every 2 weeks. Our worst weekend was we had a mother, a father, their 14-year-old daughter, 2 15-year-old girls. We had them all on suicide watch over that weekend. So that means we had someone with them 24/7.
Mr Ngarimu says many parents who have lost their kids to suicide struggled to talk to them about their issues.
Though they loved their kids, the more they tried to talk to their kids themselves, the more their kids closed them down. So they thought the next best thing was, I've got to just step back and give them their space. I think it's that crucial time there when you decide to step back, you seriously need to think about who can jump in that space.
Māori tend to be younger when they commit suicide compared to their Pākehā counterparts. Māori suicide deaths peak between 16 to 20 years old. For New Zealand Europeans, the peak is at 20. Hayley Grace Hollis from Gisborne lost her 4 siblings, Shane, Anahira, Fianza and LJ, to suicide in the last 10 years.
Our brother, he was only 18. And then 8 months later we lost our sister and she was 19, and then in 2015 we lost another brother and he was just shy of his 30th birthday. 9 months later we lost another sister, just had her 21st birthday.
Hayley wrote a song after her second brother took his life in 2015. She wanted her family and friends to never feel alone again. One of her brothers had sought help before his death, but she says it wasn't enough.
He was part of the mental health system, but unfortunately that was not really any help, and I don't think he got the help that he needed. He was just provided pills. I know it works in some cases, but in most, to me, it doesn't. The pills ain't the way, and for his case, that wasn't the way either.
Following the 4 deaths, her whānau meet once every 2 weeks to reconnect and talk about life.
We have at least 2 hours together of bonding time and learning waiata from where we come from. It also gives us time to just talk to each other and see how everyone's been, and yeah, we're sort of making time for each other now, and it has brought us more closer together.
Brendan Dunn says it's important parents ensure their kids feel valued.
Connect with your kids, not over Facebook. Turn your devices off and go out and go for a hike, smell the air, go to the beach, to other Māori families, to other fathers and that. Lead by example. Give up the drugs, give up the alcohol, better yourself for your kids and connect with them, make them feel valued.
The Child and Youth Mortality Review Committee will undertake a rangatahi suicide report over the next 18 months to highlight more effective strategies to reduce suicide rates. Mo te hōtaka o te ahi pōnei, ko te aniwa, hurihanga nui aho.
14 minutes to 6. The very thing New Zealand Post was created to do, send letters, is quickly becoming unprofitable. Every time it tries to raise prices, it's met with outrage from much of the public, like when it announced recently the cost of posting a letter was going up by 20 cents to $1.20 from July 1st. So does the letter service have a future? Here's Zach Fleming and Nick Monroe with a checkpoint experiment.
When was the last time that you personally sent a letter?
I can't remember that far back. 10 plus years maybe.
It's been ages.
I actually can't even recall the time I've ever sent a letter.
Only 10% of the 500 million letters that will be sent to New Zealand this year will be for personal reasons.
Big business, bulk business are the primary senders.
But banks, utility companies, almost every big sender actively encourages customers to opt out of paper. In the second half of last year, 38 million fewer letters were sent compared to the second half of 2016. Now, imagine you're the boss of the company tasked with making money from letters.
This year will drop by about 14%, and of course that then affects our earnings by about $30 million.
Dave Walsh is acutely aware of the task he's facing. He was promoted to CEO of New Zealand Post just over a year ago, after 2 years as CFO. So he's helmed 3 years of scrimping. And around 2,500 redundancies later, the belt can't go much tighter.
We're generally on that line of loss and gain. Most of the reasons we've just stayed on the right side is the amount of costs we've taken out of our business. That's getting harder and harder for us.
So now the only thing left is to get a new belt. On July the 1st, New Zealand Post will increase the cost of sending a letter, only by 20 cents from $1 to $1.20. But it follows the cancellation of Fast Post and the reduction of Standard Post or snail mail to every second day delivery. More expensive, less offered. So we conducted a little experiment. On the Tuesday morning after Easter, just over a month ago, I sent 6 letters from Auckland CBD to RNZ reporters across the country, in Whangarei, Hamilton, New Plymouth, Napier, Nelson and Dunedin. They all cost the same, $1. New Zealand Post target is 3 days, but that's just that, a target, not a guarantee.
Let's go get the mail.
Another beautiful day here in Paradise in Taranaki, and yeah, we're off to check the mail.
Got here, let's have a look.
Hi, so it's Saturday.
Of the 6 letters, 4 hit target. Dunedin, which to be fair was the farthest at 1,400 kilometres away, took 4 days, although still not bad for $1. But New Zealand Post lost the letter I sent to Robin Martin in New Plymouth.
Doesn't look like there's any mail in the letterbox or in the plants. It just simply hasn't arrived.
And all New Zealand Post can offer is an apology. There's no way to figure out what went wrong, so there's no way to fix whatever the problem was.
We're running at about 85 to 90 items out of 100 are hitting our 3-day letter service. And of course these are not tracked, so while we don't want anything to go missing in our network, if something occasionally goes missing, we've got no way of exactly knowing that.
But is that good enough? Before tracked parcels, we had no choice. But in 2018, why pay for an unreliable service when you can email for free, or pay $3 more and get it tracked? The tricky part for New Zealand Post is sending letters is a fixed cost business, and it's legislatively locked into keeping more than 880 postal outlets and nearly 2 million delivery points. It's trying as hard as it can to pivot to parcels as online shopping continues to grow. Recently it bought 13 new trucks and an extra 737 aircraft. But it's not enough. New Zealand Post directly attributed its $13 million loss in the second half of last year to parcel growth not making up for letter losses. So will the government let New Zealand Post shrink or even scrap its dying snail mail service? The minister responsible is Claire Curran. She wasn't available for an interview, but New Zealand Post's deed of understanding with the government is up for review in November. And caught in the middle of all this are the workers. New Zealand Post has laid off around 2,500 people over the last 5 years.
It's about making sure that we can support those people to either equip them with the skills to go and find a job in somewhere else, or try and look to make sure that the jobs that are left are full-time and meaningful, right? So they're not just boring jobs. So that's why we've been lobbying New Zealand Post really hard to keep the video coding, and that's because that's quite a technical job.
Joe Gallagher from Union Etu. Video coding at New Zealand Post is when an address is illegible to a machine. A picture of it is then analysed by a person somewhere in New Zealand.
Contracted out some of that work at the moment to the Philippines. It defies logic that you would contract those jobs overseas.
Joe says those negotiations are ongoing, but he's hopeful NZ Post will stay New Zealand Post. At the end of my interview with CEO Dave Walsh, I asked him to try and predict the future. If letters drop by 60 million each year, it could be almost completely a parcel business by just a decade.
We don't know where it's going to go. The global data is telling us expect probably half of what we're doing in 10 years' time.
There's only one thing that's certain.
We've got to expect that letter pricing will continue to go up.
For Checkpoint, Zach Fleming.
Coming up to 8 minutes to 6. The New Zealand Equestrian, Janelle Price, has described her win at the prestigious badminton horse trials as a dream come true. The 37-year-old who gave birth just 8 months ago held on to the lead she established in the arduous cross-country section through the final round of show jumping. The last woman to win the event was Australian Lucinda Fredericks in 2007. Janelle Price told sports editor Stephen Houston the win has been a long time in the making.
You have to keep believing that your day will come. Funnily enough, Toddy and I were sat down last night having a drink, and I sort of said that the mare is not, show jumping isn't her forte. She's not bad by any stretch of the imagination, but it's not her forte. And I said, I'm going to need a bit of luck. And he said, every dog has its day. And I said, are you calling her a dog? And he said, no, I'm calling you a dog. And I think there's an element of truth to that, and it simply was our day.
As you went over that last jump on the show jumping round, what went through your mind?
Just to look at the scoreboard. Even though you think you've done it, you don't want to be that person that celebrates before it's happened. So I needed confirmation that what I thought had just happened did happen. And then when I realised that it had happened, I couldn't believe it had happened. So it was a funny sequence of events, but unbelievable. And quite simply, dreams do come true.
You were the first woman to win in over 10 years.
Yeah, so they tell me. Apparently 11 years it is since the last female winner. And obviously the horse I was riding was a mare, a female as well. So it was certainly girl power to the fore. And long may it last.
How long have you been with this horse?
I've had Classic Milway for 5 years. So, while everybody sort of sees this week, it really is the accumulation of a long a lot of work, a lot of training that goes in behind the scenes. The person that owns Classic Moe, she's been in the sport for probably, at a guess, 20, 30 years, and it's her first big win. So, it's not something that everyone experiences. It is really special.
And what does a win like this mean for, I suppose, you as a rider and presumably trainer, etc.? That puts you obviously at the pinnacle of the sport?
Well, I've been amongst the framework for a while now. I've had some really good results, I guess, over the last, 5 years. But you always want to catch that big fish, don't you? And to date, I hadn't quite managed to do that. So it's nice to finally do that. I think maybe tonight I might sleep a bit better than I have for some time. And I guess there's just some sort of contentment in knowing that you've finally achieved that. But it's not to say you rest on your laurels. It's hopefully one of many more to come.
Badminton winner Janelle Price talking to sports editor Stephen Hewson, having earned $190,000 as victory prize money. We head now to Haas, where State Highway 6 almost meets the sea or turns inland, depending on whether you're approaching from the west coast or from central Otago. It's a beautiful part of the world, and its geographical remoteness has been heightened by the fact that 240-odd K of State Highway 6 has been a mobile reception black spot. No cell phones, in other words. But today, click reception. Now, let's not get carried away. It's a small click. Haas Township and roughly 3K on either side. The rest will remain a black spot. But for people going cold turkey, for tourists wanting to tell the world where they are, for kids needing pickups, for local emergency services, for anyone who just longs to send a text to a mate about the latest plot twist on Coro, it's a connection. We called Nick Kuma, who owns the Hard Antler Bar and Restaurant. And when he answered, I asked the only question you can ask a man entering a brave new world of connectivity. How are you?
Not too bad. How about yourself?
Yeah, good. Are you speaking on a cellular device?
Oh, unfortunately I am, yes.
How modern is that, bro?
Oh, yeah, it's a bit of a surprise to drive into town and have your cell phone go off, so yeah.
So did it go beep, beep and show you some bars, did it?
Yeah. So I've been up in Westport, so I've just got back in, and it's only just gone on. So yeah, very dramatic.
So when you went north to Westport, and of course you go through Hokitika and Greymouth on the way, you'd have cell coverage there, right? But when you get home, nothing.
Nothing. No, but that's good. I don't mind having no cell phone. So I've got 2 landlines, and everyone's got a landline, and I've got internet. So yeah.
It's funny, isn't it? Because on the one hand, obviously you need it in case of emergencies, and it would be very helpful to have for all sorts of reasons. But on the other hand, there is something lovely to be said for actually not always being attached to the world.
Yeah, very true. Look, what's really sad is you have people come into this, into Haas. I don't know whether you're familiar with Haas, but
I know
it's a beautiful
it well,
town,
yep.
Beautiful site.
Yeah, it is.
And it's sad to see people coming in, having a dinner, and they're on their phones. It's nice to have interaction with people, talking, and no reception. It's refreshing.
And so, do people get their phones out at the restaurant and sort of look a bit bewildered and then put them down and actually talk to each other? Have you seen that happen?
Yeah. There's quite a few people sort of panic as soon as they realise there's no reception. But yeah. I mean, look, you go to Christchurch or Auckland and you go up and you see a table full of people sitting together and all they're doing is on their phones. Well, it's different here. The locals are used to not having their phones. And it's just nice to not have someone with a phone stuck to their ear right now.
Yeah, exactly. It's the end. It's the end for you, bro. You'll be on the phone. You haven't got teenage kids by any chance, have you? You sound a bit young for that, Nick.
Yeah. No, I've got about 6 kids. So, but they love it over here. They like the fact that there's no cell phones and there's internet. So most people use Messenger these days. So, and any tourists that come into the Hard Antler Bar. There's always internet for them, or there's a landline that they can use. So, and the cell phone tower is only actually in the town area. You drive about 4 or 5 k's down the road, and there's no internet. So I had no cell phone reception. So it's only for the town site, really.
Yes, and I guess that would include, right, the people who come to town for work. What about them, particularly during the peak season? Has it been a problem attracting young service workers, for example, into town when their cell phones are of no use?
Yeah, look, I mean, I've got a cafe up the road which they've plonked the cell phone tower right in front of, so it's blocking our view. Look, the staff don't mind. It's a brilliant place to come. We find it's really hard to get staff here. We've got about 27 at peak, 27 staff, and we find that most people that come don't want to leave. So, because it gets back to how New Zealand was, before the cell phone was implanted into your ear all the time. And what we find is the cell phone it's an addiction to a lot of people, especially the younger generation.
The younger generation, that's you, isn't it, Anna Thomas?
Totally.
Totally, always on your phone. Lots of people contacting us about letters and with their stories, but this is one I really like. This is from Nana Sandra. She says she's been sending weekly postcards to her grandson in Palmerston North since moving to Nelson on the 22nd of December. She challenges all grandparents to keep New Zealand Post alive.
RNZ News at 6 o'clock. Good evening, I'm Anna Thomas. The Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern says she's been given assurances people are not being imperilled by the state of Middlemore Hospital's buildings. The county's Manukau District Health Board is considering what to do with the quake-prone maternity ward and says it's unlikely to be able to fix it without closing or moving clinical services. All the building's columns are weak, and since 2012 only a single beam and a single column have been strengthened. Jacinda Ardern says the government is working closely with the DHB to address the issues at Middlemore.
I want to ensure that all of our buildings, our hospital infrastructure is of course safe. That's the whole point that people visit there, is to ensure that they are well. To date, I've had reassurances that people's safety has not been put at risk by those buildings, but that's something that of course I would be interested in any report that suggests otherwise.
Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern. Figures show the number of police pursuits has increased by just over 400 in a year, while the deaths from those crashes have more than doubled. A driver crashed and died in New Plymouth early this morning, just minutes after the police say they called off a chase. The police say there have been just over 4,100 pursuits between March 2017 and 2018, about 400 more than the previous year. The number of deaths has also increased. There were 5 between March 2016 and 2017 and 14 in the following 12 months. In this morning's incident, the police say a driver who was speeding and who failed to stop was chased by an officer. They say the pursuit stopped after the fleeing driver reversed into the officer's vehicle. A short time later, the driver's crashed vehicle was found in a nearby street and he died at the scene. Hundreds of people evacuated from Hawaii's erupting Kilauea volcano have been told to prepare for the possibility they may not return home for some time. 2 new glowing fissures have opened up in the Leilani estate area, where lava has burst through the ground and has spewed up to 70 metres in the air. 26 homes have now been destroyed. USA Today reporter Trevor Hughes says up to 1,700 people have now been evacuated.
There are people staged up here at the Evacuation Information Center. I mean, you've got pickup trucks full of camping equipment and kitchen goods. You've got people driving around with mattresses on their roofs, trying to figure out where they're going to sleep. Because a lot of folks, this is their 4th night that they've been out of their homes.
Trevor Hughes says the volcano is showing no sign of letting up. The chief executive of Hawke's Bay Craggy Range Winery says removing a controversial track up the eastern slope of Te Mata Peak is no longer the best option. The winery is now proposing to plant the slope with natives to hide the path, despite promising iwi in January it would restore the landscape. Representing local iwi, the chairperson of Te Tai Whenua o Heratonga, Mike Pahu, says mana whenua still want to see the track removed completely. But Michael Wilding says keeping that promise would cost millions and create legal issues.
It's only going to leave the land potentially in a marginally better position. You're still going to see where the track was, but it's going to leave the community in a far worse position. So what the experts have actually said to us is the option that they've put forward around mitigation, doing the revegetation with the native flora, is actually going to leave the land in a far better position.
Michael Wilding from Craggy Range Winery. The government has announced it will consult with social service providers and the public on how best it can use personal data to improve services. In November, the new Labour-led government scrapped National's controversial data for funding plan, calling it dangerous and unnecessary. The plan would have required social service providers to hand over personal client details in exchange for funding. The Social Development Minister, Carmel Sebaloni, says 1,500 groups have been asked to take part.
There are 28 locations where the consultation will take place. Tomorrow the letters go out inviting people to participate. It will include NGOs, it will include iwi, it will include iwi organisations, it will include service users.
Carmel Sebaloni says the consultation will take place from May to August. The Far North charter boat skipper says there are more great white sharks around this season and they're bigger than usual. Rob Parker says there have always been great whites around Hauhora Harbour in summer and autumn, but this year with warmer water and plenty of fish about, they seem to be thriving.
I've had a few do barrel rolls in front of the boats. We've seen them jump out by our famous rock out of Hauhora Heads here. Just recently of times the Hauhora Big Game Club experienced quite a large shark jumping out of the water chasing fish.
Rob Parker says the sharks are part of nature and no threat to the fishery or his business, but he says he wouldn't let his young children swim in the harbour at this time of the year. It's 6:05. Super Rugby has labelled a report that 3 South African teams are set to withdraw from the competition to play in Europe as simply wrong. The Durban-based Sharks have been named as the first team set to leave Super Rugby and join the European Pro 14 competition for 2019-2020, according to a report in Wales Online. SANZAR, the organisers of Super Rugby and the Rugby Championship, say the report is unfounded and South Africa, Australia, New Zealand and Argentina remain committed to competing in the tournament. The panel to carry out a wholesale review of the Silver Ferns failed Commonwealth Games campaign will look into anything and everything to uncover what went wrong, say the review's leader, Don McKinnon. McKinnon, an Auckland lawyer and former Netball New Zealand chair, is joined by America's Cup team New Zealand Chief Operating Officer Kevin Shoebridge and former Silver Fern and businesswoman Linda Vagana on the review panel. McKinnon says they will leave no stone unturned and the review will cover all aspects of the team's performance, including preparation and planning, team strategy and tactics, resourcing, leadership selection and team culture. And after chalking up her first LPGA Tour win in 2 years last week, the New Zealand golfer Lydia Ko has produced a 4-under-par final round to finish tied for 8th in the latest event in Texas. And that's the news.
This week on Nights, Tony Tan's Hong Kong Cookbook. The twins, Oliver and Callum Devlin, also known as the band Hans Puckett, join me for this week's sofa session. Eric Crampton casts a critical eye over the government's economic policies. This week's overseas correspondent, Lien Huang, is on the line from Vietnam. And just in time for the final, we have a Sonic Tonic dedicated to Eurovision.
And between 10 and 11 p.m, join me, Karen Hay, for Lately. We'll be focusing on the events of the day, both nationally and internationally, and talking to the newsmakers in an eclectic mix that covers everything from the arts to politics to live events. That's Lately with Karen Hay in the 10 p.m. hour, weeknights on RNZ National.
And now we have the short forecast from Met Service until midnight tomorrow. Excuse me. Here we go. All of the North Island, fine weather. Cloud developing this evening from Taranaki to Manawatu, and there could be the odd shower around Taihape. For Nelson, mainly fine, but a few showers about tomorrow. For Bulla, a few showers, more frequent tomorrow morning and turning to rain in the evening. Marlborough and Canterbury, northwesterlies becoming strong tomorrow and severe gale in exposed places of South Canterbury. Westland and Fiordland, periods of rain, briefly heavy tomorrow afternoon or evening with possible thunderstorms. For Otago and Southland, fine with showers about Stewart Highland. A period of rain tomorrow afternoon or evening, west to northwest gales tomorrow, severe at times. And for the Chatham Islands, mainly fine, but a few showers in the morning. RNZ National, it's 6:08 and you're listening to Checkpoint with John Campbell.
Thank you very much, where I've been making a hash of it bilingually tonight. When I was apologising for my French pronunciation.
Pronunciation?
I said pronunciation. I was saying it in French. Those of you who've emailed in to complain about that said your French was fine, your English is awful. There's no pleasing some of them. Our listeners, anatomists.
You try though, don't you? You try.
I don't
You
know
really
whether
give
I
it
do.
your best shot speaking English and French.
It felt like I did a GBH on both languages tonight. I had to go up the French, crossed the channel, had to go up the English. So apologies to everyone who loves language in any form whatsoever. Lots of people commenting on Nick out of the West Coast saying he's got about 6 children. People really enjoyed that line. Brilliant West Coast deadpan. Thank you for your feedback. Let's have a go on this one, ladies and gentlemen. Residents of Pohoa on Hawaii's Big Island say they could be out of their homes for months or even years as the lava from the Kilauea volcano threatens their homes. More than 1,700 people have been evacuated, 26 homes have been destroyed as 2 new glowing fissures opened up in the Leilani Estates area, forcing lava to spew through cracks up to 100 metres in the air. Remember, these are opening up in new areas. Jane Howard and her husband neighbour Doug, fled their homes over the weekend, but today they were allowed back for just 8 minutes, believe it or not, to get photos, documents, personal items. Jane told me a short time ago many families now feel cut off, not knowing when or if they can return home.
Right now we're an island, and we actually broke a barrier and had to go over a bunch of cracks in a slipping roadway because that was pretty sketchy getting in there. You know, so we're kind of an island. So far we're good, but it doesn't look good.
What's the lava like when you're close to it? Can you describe it for us?
Well, I could pass the phone to my friend Doug.
Is Doug?
Yeah, he goes, "You think it's hot?"
Is Doug there?
A bit warmer here today than usual.
Doug, it's John Campbell from Radio New Zealand. Have you been? Thank you for talking to us. Have you been up close to the lava?
Oh yeah, oh yeah. And our friends here have been closer than we have today. We're all refugees today.
We were being pelted by falling rocks.
You've been pelted by falling rocks. That must have been terrifying.
It was.
And it was hard to breathe because it was very thick.
Forgive my total ignorance, but when you're pelted by falling rocks, is the sky just full of them, or are they coming down one at a time and you're kind of able to dodge them? What's going on?
It was intermittent splatters that were going up in the adjacent property, and they were going up so high that they would skip the nearby acre and hit us about, hundreds of feet away.
It created a rock shower.
Yeah, it was a shower of rocks.
Molten, hot rock.
Yeah, you remember when you were a kid on the playground, they threw gravel at you?
Wow. So you're all out of your homes. There's just a group of you sitting there wondering what the hell is going to happen.
Yep.
It's going to be months, I think. Maybe years.
Doug, you're laughing. What is that? Is that gallows humour, Doug? Or are you? I guess there's nothing you can do, really, is there?
I suppose, and we're probably in hopeful denial. As it's the irony of it all, when people say, "Oh, you live in paradise," and they're really jealous, but they don't realize how dramatic the weather can be over, especially when you live so close to a volcano.
Yeah, that's the truth.
So I suppose there's not much you can do. It doesn't help to cry. So you might as well laugh about it. Tomorrow might be a different story.
And forgive me, you don't have to. I'm asking personal questions of people I've only just met. But what's your insurance situation?
That's another joke.
Good question.
Yeah.
You can't buy insurance when you live in lava. You can't buy fire insurance because if your house burns down and it's caused by lava, you just can't buy it. And if you could, it would be prohibitive.
So you choose to live there anyway.
We're homeless. We're homeless, but we're not going to starve here.
No. Why do you live there? Sell the place to me. When there's not showers of molten rock falling down on you, is it the most wonderful spot, is it?
Well, it's warm.
It's never cold. It's never cold. And you don't own a snowblower. You do have to mow the grass all year round, though. That's kind of a drag.
And you can swim year round.
Yes, you can swim in the winter. The flowers are pretty. You can grow just about anything.
The cold day here is 65 degrees. The hot day is 78.
Yeah.
It's always right in the middle.
Yeah, the temperature, I think, is the thing that the most appeals to me. It's fairly moderate, unless you have a volcano going.
There was just a phone being passed around at an evacuation centre on Big Island. Just residents who are out of their homes, some may never get back, talking to us earlier this afternoon. The Prime Minister has met and exchanged gifts with Hillary Clinton at their hour-long meeting this morning. The 2016 presidential candidate and former Secretary of State, of course, met with Jacinda Ardern in Auckland over breakfast. Hillary Clinton, who arrived in the country yesterday, will be speaking at Auckland's Spark Arena tonight about the 2016 US election, its aftermath, and her experience as a woman in politics. Jacinda Ardern says this morning they talked about domestic policy like the future of work and also being a mum in politics.
We also exchanged gifts, and Hillary passed on to me a gift she was told every New Zealand child needed to have, and which I can tell you I did not have already, and that was a buzzy bee. So she's obviously been very well informed during her time here. I gave her 2 children's books, which I thought she may wish to read to her grandchildren, by authors Lindley Dodd and Margaret Mahi, which included A Summary Saturday Morning and Harry McCleary from Donaldson's Dairy, because I know you want that level of detail.
Jacinda Ardern. Our reporter Tom Furley is outside the Spark Arena where Hillary Clinton will speak tonight and joins us now via live view. Hi Tom, what can people expect? Are they going in behind you now? They are going in.
Yeah, a few people coming through now. The VIPs arrived a bit earlier. A big line of them have come in now. They've got a special cocktail function before the main event itself. But it's a bit strange being here and people aren't in sort of band T-shirts and that sort of thing. But I guess it's quite a formal occasion. People here obviously to hear the former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton talks. So I mean, this is kind of I guess it's sort of a flow on from her book launch late last year, What Happened. So where she sort of reflects on her US election and what's happened since, and on leadership as well. So I mean, I've had a chat to a fair few people in the last couple of days who are going and tonight, and it seems like most people are interested. While obviously the US election is an area of interest, they're just interested to sort of see what she's like in person. So a lot of people wanting to see, you know, how she thinks, how she portrays herself on stage. So that's really a lot of what people are here to see, is just her in the flesh, not so much this politics stuff. But I guess she'll be talking a lot about that at the start, and then Dame Jenny Shipley is holding the conversation after that. So that'll be a chance for her to sort of direct the conversation and questions more towards sort of general ideas and things that New Zealanders want to know and find out from Hillary Clinton. So that might be, you know, her role as a woman in leadership, which a lot of people see her as a role model for. So from tonight, she'll talk for I think about an hour all up, and then she's off to Australia. So she'll do the same over in Sydney and Melbourne. So they'll have their own unique Australian experience. So they've got former Prime Minister Julia Gillard moderating those ones. So she'll jet off tomorrow. But yeah, people coming in now. Lots of suits, lots of people nice dressed up. So big evening ahead, I think.
Tom Furley live from Spark Arena, or outside it anyway. Thank you very much indeed. It's almost 18 minutes past 6. It was a result which took the decline of our national netball team to new levels, and the poor performance of the Silver Ferns at last month's Commonwealth Games is about to go under the microscope. This afternoon, Netball New Zealand announced the independent 3-member panel who will undertake a full review into the Ferns' failure to win a medal on the Gold Coast, including a shock loss, of course, to Malawi. Auckland lawyer and former Netball New Zealand chair Don McKinnon heads the panel and is joined by America's Cup Team New Zealand Chief Operating Officer Kevin Shoebridge and former Silver Fern businesswoman Pacifica community leader Linda Vangana. Clay Wilson spoke with Don McKinnon and Netball New Zealand Chief Executive Jenny Wiley in Auckland this afternoon, and started by asking what they were looking for in the appointment of their review panel members.
Independence is the key, but what was also important was the leadership, the involvement in campaigns that have had success but also have had some adversity, and also an understanding of netball, and I think we've got a well-balanced panel in that respect.
Just in terms of a timeline, what's your plan with how this moves forward from here?
Yeah, so we're taking a two-phase approach to this review. What's really important in phase one is to get a good understanding of the Commonwealth Games campaign and the preceding 2 years that led into that, and to be able to get some key learnings as a result of that by early June, so that when the Silver Ferns form again for their next test series in September, we've had a robust look at things. Phase 2 will take a little bit longer, and that will go a little bit deeper into the high performance system and talent pathways and any other areas the review panel find material.
Okay, Don, I guess first of all, being part of this, what do you see as your role here? What has Jenny and her team asked you guys to come in and look at and do?
The first and foremost exercise is to examine the campaign and to talk to all of the key players in that process, and then if we can, identify the strengths of the campaign and the weaknesses, what went wrong, because in all likelihood things did go wrong, and then produce a report that has some clear learnings from the process. Undertake a very calm, measured, robust approach to reach a point where we're making some sensible findings, sensible recommendations. That's phase one. Inevitably, there are broader issues in a campaign than just the weeks and months leading up to it, though. And phase two is going to be really an exciting project, because that's all about how to produce great female athletes that win on the world stage in the future.
Okay, so with this first phase, in terms of times, how long do you expect it to take, and when do you expect to be making some of those recommendations?
Sure, it's going to be a rather manic month, frankly. There's a long list of people to talk to, and we still hope to have a report to the Netball New Zealand board by about mid-June. So that's about 5 weeks, possibly less, and as I said, a lot to do between now and then.
So you say you're going to talk to a lot of people. What sort of people? Obviously players, all the coaching, management stuff. How deep are you going to go?
Well, quite deep. We have a draft list of people we wish to speak to at the moment, but there are more than 30 names on that list already. That includes all 12 players that were involved in the campaign. They'll be invited to talk to us. Certainly we'll speak to the entire coaching staff, the support staff, people from High Performance Sport NZ, Players Association. And I think really importantly, we're going to try and speak to some sort of key influencers in the netball community. We're going to try and identify 2 or 3 or 4 people who are passionate about the game, have a lot to offer, but who weren't necessarily involved in this campaign.
And just one final thought, Don, I guess what sort of questions, what are the main questions on the top of your mind when you're going to speak to these people, the likes of Janine, Katrina, the main players that are involved here?
We'll adopt a fairly consistent Q&A approach to everybody we speak to, so that everyone has the chance to comment across a broad range of issues. But inevitably you're looking at performance, you're looking at everything around the build-up, were there enough games, enough camps, how strong was the strength and conditioning, how strong was mental skills, nutrition, all of those aspects of preparation, on-court tactics, buy-in of the players. It needs to be fairly broad. And we'll cover off all of those issues, and the coaching team will have the chance to give us their perspective, the support team, the players, and I'm fairly sure we'll get some pretty strong themes to emerge out of that process.
That was Netball New Zealand Chief Executive Jenny Wiley, and of course Don McKinnon at the end there talking to Clay Wilson. It's 22 minutes past 5. You are with Checkpoint. 10 Countdown supermarkets will stop providing plastic bags this month. The company says it's the first step of a wider initiative to reduce plastic, and all of its supermarkets will follow suit by the end of this year. So what do Countdown customers think of the move? Well, RNZ went to one Wellington supermarket to find out.
I hate plastic. I'd like to empty everything out that's plastic and leave it by the door on the way out if I could.
How are you going to lug all your food up your drive? I mean, those bags I think are $1 or so each, you know. How many bags am I going to buy? 20 of those bags? And will I remember to keep them in my vehicle? No. Oh, it's a bit Mickey Mouse, I think. I mean, okay, you're trying to save the whales and the blooming dolphins and stuff, but maybe people just have to be responsible with the plastic bags and stuff.
So if they're going to do away with these plastic bags, bring in the old large brown paper bags that the old self-helps and Four Squares used to give out to their customers years ago. We don't mind paying 10 cents a bag, but we'll have to have something as a substitute if they're going to do away with these plastic bags.
Have you ever thought of using reusable?
Yeah, they're a pain in the arse though. The ones they sell are too large and they pack so much into them that I can't even fit. If I need a couple of things, they're too heavy to carry. So, and I always recycle all my plastic bags anyway, so they always get reused. So I don't really have too much of a problem with them. I don't make sure I pick up things off the beach and things, do my recycling bit. Otherwise, yeah, that's about it.
Countdown customers in Wellington. India's Supreme Court is due to consider a request to change the location for the trial of 8 Hindu men accused of the rape and murder of an 8-year-old Muslim girl earlier this year. It's a very big story in India. Obviously, the BBC's Yogita Lime went to Jammu and Kashmir and has this report.
Once again, a rape and murder brought people out on the streets in India. This time, the victim was merely 8 years old. She belonged to this Muslim nomadic tribe. They roamed the hills and valleys of the state of Jammu and Kashmir. She was captured when she was out grazing horses. Police say she was raped, tortured and murdered by Hindus who wanted the tribe to move off their land. Her family has continued their journey into the mountains, waiting for justice.
She was beautiful, smart and intelligent. The only thing I want is for her attackers to go through the same pain that she went through.
8 men have so far been arrested. Because of where the crime is said to have taken place, the alleged motive for it, and the fact that the girl was a Muslim and all of those who've been arrested are Hindus, has meant that this has gone from being about sexual violence against women and girls in India to being about polarization between 2 religious communities. Not far from the temple, family members of the accused and villagers from the area are sitting in protest. They are demanding a federal investigation. The daughter of one of those arrested says she too wants justice for the child. But in the Muslim majority state, she fears her community is being targeted.
The unity of Hindus is being attacked. Our voices have been suppressed. All our men have been arrested. Who will we go back home for?
Prime Minister Modi has promised justice for the victim, and his cabinet has approved the death sentence for those who rape children. But many believe the incident has set a dangerous precedent.
The most scary part is the use of the body of that little girl for scaring away an entire community, because it has long-term repercussions, both for the safety of women as well as the safety of the minorities.
5 years ago, these protests following the gang rape of a Delhi student had also forced the government to pass tougher laws. But in a deeply patriarchal society, little seems to be changing.
That report from the BBC. Just before we go tonight with the time at 27 minutes past 6, some of the biggest names in football have been sending messages of support to the legendary former Manchester United manager Sir Alex Ferguson. The 76-year-old suffered a brain hemorrhage at the weekend. He had emergency surgery yesterday and is recovering, we hear, in intensive care still. Here's the BBC's David Ornstein.
Last seen in public looking fit and well a week ago, news of Sir Alex Ferguson's illness has rocked the world of football and beyond. Among the many messages of support, David Beckham said, "Keep fighting, boss," sending prayers and love to Kathy and the whole family. While another ex-Manchester United star, Cristiano Ronaldo, wrote, "My thoughts and prayers are with you, my dear friend. Be strong, boss."
Everyone at Match of the Day sends our best wishes to Sir Alex Ferguson.
The flood of good wishes unrelenting.
And I would like to wish my fellow manager, Ferguson, well and very quickly.
He's the most iconic figure within football, certainly in the last 30 years. If then you add that to the fact that he's such an important role model for so many people around the world, he's captured the world, and he's a national institution, really.
He was yesterday admitted to Salford Royal Hospital. The 76-year-old had emergency surgery for a brain hemorrhage. The procedure is said to have gone very well, but a period of intensive care will follow.
When he starts to regain consciousness, his neurological state will be assessed repeatedly, and he will be only transitioned to an area of care which requires less support when he's starting to regain his independence and he's stable.
At Old Trafford, supporters spoke of their admiration for Sir Alex.
He's a legend, and he has been for the whole club. And even though he isn't running the club now, I think a lot of people will feel this.
I'm a Leeds supporter, but obviously I respect Sir Alex and what he's done for football. Greatest football manager of all time.
Well, this is where Sir Alex Ferguson is revered the most. A stand is named after him, and there's a statue in his honour. His status is legendary. He led Manchester United to an incredible 38 trophies in 26 years, an all-time great of the game at home and abroad, renowned for his tenacity and fighting spirit. But now Sir Alex Ferguson faces perhaps his biggest challenge of all.
And that report from the BBC Ian's Checkpoint for tonight. Thank you so much for being with us, everyone. Have a wonderful evening. We'll be back tomorrow at 5.
RNZ News headlines at 6:30. The Prime Minister says she's been assured that patient safety is not compromised by the poor state of the embattled Middlemore Hospital buildings. The number of police pursuits has risen by more than 400 in a year, and deaths from those crashes have more than doubled. A reporter says some people are facing being away from their homes for a fourth night because of Hawaii's erupting Kilauea volcano. And the co-founder of World denies the company has misled customers by attaching Made in New Zealand tags to garments made offshore. Our next news and weather at 7.
Eastern Ghouta cannot wait.
It's no secret that Xi Jinping has been tightening his grip on power.
Ministers must not engage in sexual relations with their staff.
One father unwittingly spoke to these men on their way to kidnap these schoolgirls.
I really believe I'd run in there even if I didn't have a weapon.
Like